A computer studying the Peruvian desert marked more than 1,000 places where something unusual might be hiding beneath the surface. Most of the marks were faint. Some looked like natural stains. Others appeared to be broken paths, disturbed stones, or shadows created by the sun. But when archaeologists traveled into the desert and inspected the strongest candidates on the ground, human figures began to appear. Camel-like animals, birds, cats, heads separated from bodies. Strange creatures formed from lines so shallow that they had remained almost invisible for nearly 2,000 years. In only 6 months, the team confirmed 303 previously unknown figurative geoglyphs. It had taken nearly a century to identify about 430 before them. Artificial intelligence had helped archaeologists almost double the known collection in a fraction of the time. The discovery did not solve the mystery of the Nazca lines. It made the mystery much larger, and it revealed that the most famous drawings in the desert may have been only one part of a far more complicated system. The Nazca lines lie on the dry coastal plain of southern Peru, hundreds of kilometers south of Lima. Across this enormous landscape are straight lines, spirals, triangles, trapezoids, animals, plants, and human-like figures. Some designs are small enough to overlook while walking beside them. Others stretch across the desert for hundreds of meters. The most famous include a hummingbird, a spider, a monkey, and enormous birds whose wings spread across the plain. From the air, their shapes appear almost impossible. From the ground, many look like nothing more than shallow paths between dark stones. If discoveries that use modern technology to reveal the ancient world are why you are here, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the new study suggests the Nazca people were not creating one kind of monument for one single reason. They may have built different geoglyphs for different audiences, using the desert itself as a place for ritual, travel, warning, memory, and communication. The drawings survived because the Nazca Desert is one of the driest environments on Earth. The surface is covered with stones darkened by long exposure to the air. Beneath them lies lighter soil. To create a line, ancient workers moved the dark stones aside and exposed the brighter ground below. The contrast produced an image that could remain visible as long as wind, water, animals, and people did not destroy it. The technique was simple. The planning was not. A figure could be designed using stakes, ropes, measurements, and smaller sketches. Workers did not need to fly above the desert to create a large shape. They could divide the design into sections and enlarge it step by step. Nearby hills also offered raised viewpoints. The geoglyph tradition developed over a long period. The famous Nazca culture created many of the best-known designs, but some geoglyphs are connected with earlier communities, including the Paracas. The activity continued for centuries. Early researchers proposed astronomical calendars. Some lines seemed to point toward the rising or setting of the sun at important times of year. Others appeared to match stars or constellations. Later investigators argued that the lines were connected with water, fertility, mountain worship, pilgrimages, or ceremonies. The desert has also attracted claims about aliens and ancient aircraft. Those stories became popular because the largest figures are easiest to recognize from above, but there is no archaeological evidence that extraterrestrials created them or that the straight lines were landing strips. The stones were moved by human hands. Pottery, settlements, religious centers, trails, and images on ancient objects connect the geoglyphs with the people who lived in the region. The harder question is why those people invested so much labor in marking empty ground. For decades, archaeologists tried to answer that question by mapping the figures one at a time. But the landscape was too large for human eyes to inspect every patch efficiently. Faint geoglyphs were especially difficult. Erosion had blurred their edges. Vehicles and foot traffic had damaged some. Others blended into stones, drainage channels, and natural textures. A researcher might examine thousands of images and still overlook the shadow of a figure. Yamagata University had already spent years documenting geoglyphs in the Nazca region. The team worked with IBM Research to build an artificial intelligence system capable of examining aerial imagery and identifying areas that resembled known designs. The AI did not announce that every unusual mark was an ancient drawing. It created a list of possible locations. Researchers then reviewed the images, selected promising candidates, traveled into the field, and examined the ground directly. A real discovery required human confirmation. The system identified 1,309 likely candidates across the desert. Field teams examined about 1/4 of them. From those investigations, they confirmed 303 new figurative geoglyphs, or groups of connected figures. Many of the newly confirmed figures belonged to a category that had received less public attention than the giant animals. Researchers describe them as relief-type geoglyphs. Instead of being formed mainly by one continuous outline, they were created by clearing broader areas of stones. They were usually smaller than the great line-type figures spread across the open plain. Their subjects were also different. The large line-type geoglyphs often represented wild animals. The smaller relief-type images more often showed human beings, domesticated camelids, body parts, and scenes connected with human activity. Some figures appear to show people carrying objects. Others resemble warriors, animals, or human heads separated from bodies. The exact interpretation of every image remains uncertain. A few lines can create several possible shapes, especially after centuries of erosion. But when hundreds of examples are compared, patterns begin to emerge. Location became one of the most important clues. The small relief-type figures were frequently placed close to winding trails. People walking through the desert could see them from nearby. They did not require an aircraft or distant mountain to be recognized. A traveler approaching one might suddenly notice a human figure, an animal, or a scene beside the path. The researchers proposed that these geoglyphs may have acted like visual messages. They could have marked activities, identities, warnings, stories, or places important to people using the trails. Calling them ancient billboards is only an analogy. There were no written advertisements in the modern sense, but their placement suggests they were designed to be encountered by individuals or small groups moving across the landscape. The giant line-type figures followed another pattern. They were associated more closely with networks of long straight lines and large trapezoids. These spaces could accommodate groups rather than one traveler. The researchers argue that the larger figures may have been linked with community rituals. People may have walked along the lines, gathered at particular places, and viewed the images as part of ceremonies performed across the desert. This fits wider evidence that movement was important in Andean religious life. A sacred landscape was not only something to observe, it was something to enter. Walking a route could be part of the ritual itself. The Nazca region also contained Cahuachi, a major ceremonial center built from adobe near the Nazca River. Its pyramids, plazas, and platforms attracted people from surrounding communities. Pilgrims may have traveled between settlements, water sources, hills, geoglyphs, and ceremonial spaces. The lines could have organized that movement. Some may have directed groups towards sacred areas. Others may have created stages for ceremonies performed far from ordinary homes. The new discoveries strengthen the idea that the geoglyphs belonged to a living network of roads and rituals, rather than a collection of isolated pictures. One universal explanation is now even less convincing. Some geoglyphs may have guided pilgrims. Some may have marked stories. Some may have been offerings. Some may have defined routes or gathering places. The same design could also carry several meanings at once. A bird might represent an animal, a supernatural being, a place, a family, or a request connected with water. Without written explanations from the creators, archaeology must work through patterns rather than certainty. This is where the dramatic version of the discovery needs to slow down. The AI did not decode a secret language. It did not translate the figures into sentences. It did not prove the final purpose of the Nazca lines. And it did not discover 303 giant drawings equal in size to the famous hummingbird. Many of the new geoglyphs are smaller, fainter relief-type figures. The software produced candidates, while human teams confirmed the discoveries in the field. The study offers a stronger explanation for how different categories may have been used. It does not close the investigation. That uncertainty makes the result more important, not less. Before the survey, researchers were trying to understand the Nazca landscape from a limited sample. The 303 new figures greatly expanded the evidence. Motifs that once looked rare became repeated patterns. Relationships with trails became clearer. The difference between small human-related scenes and large wild animal figures became harder to dismiss as coincidence. The desert began to look less like one enormous message and more like a visual system built at several scales. One scale belonged to the traveler. A small figure beside a path could communicate with people passing close by. Another scale belonged to the community. A giant animal beside broad lines and trapezoids could form part of a ritual landscape used by larger groups. The same desert allowed both experiences to exist together. The discovery also changed how archaeologists may search other landscapes. Artificial intelligence can examine aerial photographs, satellite data, and terrain models faster than a human team. It can detect weak patterns across areas too large to inspect manually. But archaeology still depends on context. A computer can identify a shape. It cannot automatically determine who made it, when it was made, or what it meant. Technology accelerated the search. It did not replace archaeology. The full list of 1,309 candidates means the investigation is unfinished. Only about 1/4 were examined during the 6-month campaign. Some unvisited candidates will be natural features or modern damage. Others may become new geoglyphs when researchers reach them. The known total could rise again. Additional figures may reveal new themes, new routes, or entirely different uses of the landscape. At the same time, every discovery creates a conservation problem. Geoglyphs are fragile. A tire track can cut through a line in seconds. Footsteps can scatter stones that remained in place for centuries. Road building, mining, expanding settlements, and extreme weather can damage figures before they are properly recorded. Some of the smallest geoglyphs are nearly invisible to anyone who does not know they are there. Mapping them is the first step toward protecting them. Nearly 2,000 years ago, a group of people walked into the desert and began moving stones. They did not see an empty wasteland. They saw roots, gathering places, sacred ground, animals, ancestors, water, danger, and memory. They drew figures beside paths where travelers could meet them. They created giant animals beside spaces where communities may have gathered. Then the people disappeared, the rituals ended, and the desert kept the marks. For a century, aircraft and archaeologists slowly recovered a few hundred figures. Then an artificial intelligence system searched the landscape again. It found patterns human eyes had passed over. Field teams followed those patterns into the desert, and 303 ancient images returned to view. The Nazca lines were already one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. Now we know that hundreds more were hiding beside them. The next investigation is waiting on screen now.